Hello, hello, welcome back. I'm in rare form today and posting another video. This time I have my Chikuhodo powder brushes. I've gotten probably at least 2 dozen requests to do a comparison between all the powder brushes I have, the MK series and the Z series. All of these brushes are powder brushes, so large face brushes made of gray squirrel hair. So what do I do with all these fluff balls? Mainly I look at them, I do use them, but if you didn't need a face powder brush, I wouldn't watch this video. If you want a face powder brush, okay, now we're talking. So, all of them, big fat fluffs. We're going to start with this one. Can't really tell if I turn it that way, so we'll not do that. This is the Z1, this is from the Z series. This is the Z9, also from the Z series. This is the MK1 from the MK series, the Makie series. And this is the MK2, and this is the MKMO. So let's start with the most basic two, the Z1 and Z9. If you watched my Chikuhodo Z series video, you'll have heard me talk about these in more depth. I'm going to talk about these mostly in terms of shape right now. So, the Z1 is completely round. It's kind of shaped like an egg. It has a little bit of a taper that starts here and tapers more off towards here until you have this rounded dome at the top. Density-wise, it's quite flexible at the top, but it does have a nice body and spring to it. As you can see, that's the spread. This is the most unique of all of the powder face brushes. I highly recommend getting at least this one. Personally, I like to buff in round motions, so that's why I really like the Z1. The Z9 is a paddle shape. You got the big flat side, and you've got this and taper, which starts about here, I would say 2/3 the way up, and goes up like that. You've got a footprint that looks like this. This is wash and dried without a brush guard. That's the Z9. All the other brushes that I'm going to talk about after are also paddle profile. So you've got that. So as you can see, the difference between the Z9 and the MK1 is the MK1 is bigger, more puffed out, and it has a large footprint overall. It is also, let's see, ever so slightly longer. What does this mean for the brush? Well, it's also wider at the bottom. What does it mean for the brush? It's bigger. So you got a bigger surface area with the MK1. The Z9, however, will have more of a spring back to it. So if you look at how they react to pressure, the MK1 is ever so slightly more floppy. What this translates to is how it feels across the skin and how it folds across curves. Both of them are extremely soft. However, the Z9 will give you a little bit more pressure and resistance. So you're able to use more different types of pressure fit. You can use heavy pressure, medium pressure, light pressure to achieve different effects when you're coloring your face. The Z9 is suitable for setting powder. If you just pat it on, it's suitable for bronzer if you're sweeping it on. It's also suitable for finishing, but it's not as good as finishing as the MK1 is, because the MK1 has that looseness that you don't have to be as careful about your pressure so that you don't disturb your makeup underneath. And then this is the Z1 I'm showing. You can see how the bristles move relative to the MK2, which has a lot more movement to it. So now we have the MK1 the peonies, versus the MK2. People have sworn up and down, left and right, that these brushes are different, that they're not the same. But in my experience, these brushes are identical heads on different handles. Same length, same width, pretty much the same profile. I would chalk up the differences to how I've been storing them and how the artisan made them. So all of these brushes are handmade. So you're going to see a little bit of variation. Density-wise, using my patented squeeze test, they're pretty much the same. If anything, the MK2 is ever so slightly more dense, but not something that I would chalk up to being a different model of brush altogether. I could be completely wrong, but these brushes are interchangeable for me. If I had calipers, maybe I'd be able to tell. But as far as powder brushes go, both of these are finishing brushes or bronzer brushes for me. The difference is in the handle. And I believe the MK1 might have been a limited run and has sold out and is out of print. And you can't get them anymore, which is a pity because I do like the handle in this one more. So if you do run across an MK1, and you also have an MK2 for consideration, the MK2 feels ever so slightly more dense, but when I apply it to skin, you pretty much feel the same. So that's the MK1 and the MK2. So let me show you the handles up close. You can see peonies are supposedly called the king of flowers. And then, of course, you have your standard cherry blossoms. I was reading somewhere, I think it was Fude-kun's blog, that cherry blossoms are actually not a good thing, even though they're so widely used as a symbol of Japanese culture. I think it was something about having them relate to mourning, but don't quote me on that. I prefer the MK1 handle because it has more contrast thanks to that lively, bright green. But the MK2 is perfectly beautiful. Lastly, we have the MKMO. This one is probably the most unique handle. It has a little bit of a holographic foil to it. I'm not sure if it's showing up on camera, but it's absolutely lovely. And the packaging it came in was absolutely lovely. Let me show you that. So the MKMO came in this tube. Has this decorative paper, a little cord, and you can use these as brush cups. And it has this sleeve that comes in. It's open on both ends, so you can remove your brush without damaging it. And of course, it has a little insert for information about your brush. I keep this packaging because it's so lovely. All the other brushes that I've shown you so far came in just like the standard plastic packaging slip. So, MKMO, this one has been discontinued and replaced by the MKUM. It's, I believe, plum blossoms. That one explicitly says that the head of the MKUM is the same as the MKMO. Because I do not have that one, I will be talking about the MKMO instead. So, this one is different in that the handle and the ferrule are completely matte, kind of like the Takumi series. You have that sort of matte satiny finish, but for in all intents and purposes, it's matte. That gives it a very unique look as among all your other brushes. It makes that design stand out even more. I believe the other one goes up vertically more. The MKUM is what I mean by the other one. So, in comparison to the MK1 and MK2, we're looking at a completely different brush with the MKMO. Like, we're not even in the same category in terms of length and thickness. So, let's discard the MK1 and the MK2 as a comparison for the MKMO. We've established that the MK1 and MK2 are longer than the Z9. And they're also thicker than the Z9. So the closest comparison you have to the Z9 is the MKMO. As you can see, they're about the same thickness that way. Where the difference lies, they're about the same dimensions down at the ferrule. Where the difference lies is, as you can see, this has a pinched ferrule. This one has a completely open one. What that pinched ferrule does is kind of splay out the bristles out here a little bit more, but keeping that density at the base. So the Z9, by nature of that pinched ferrule, will feel more airy than the MKMO. Am I saying it right? The Z9 is going to feel more airy than the MKMO. And also, because the MKMO is shorter, it has a lot less spring back and flexibility in the tips. So that there, MKMO, Z9, it's more flexible. This one is better as a setting brush because it is more firm, and it still works well as a bronzer brush. It just has less spread. So the Z9 is a superior bronzer brush, while the MKMO is the superior setting brush. So out of all of these brushes, the MKMO is the best setting brush. The MK1 and MK2 are the best finishing brushes for me, as well as good bronzer brushes. The best bronzer brush is the Z9, and the best overall brush for setting, bronzer, finishing is the Z1. I might be biased, but I like the Z1 most out of all of these brushes. The MK1 and MK2 take it into almost too big category. They're a little bit too loose for setting. They're good for bronzer, but they're a little bit uncontrollable. But if that doesn't bother you and you just like all over bronzing, these are perfectly fine for bronzer. I do like the firmness of the slightly greater firmness of the Z9 for bronzer though. So that's why I call this the best bronzer brush. These are great. The MKs are great for bronzer and finishing. This one is good for setting because it is so almost firm. Don't mistake firm and for not soft. The hairs on these are all super soft. I could run my hands across like this all day. It's soft, but it has more resilience. It has more spring back to it. So it will feel harder and more firm on the skin as opposed to these, which are like running a cloud with very low resistance over. The resistance of the MKMO is actually greater than the resistance in the Z1, so it makes a better setting brush than the Z1. So, yep, that's all the powder brushes. If you have questions, leave them below. Like, the biggest one that even I'm not able to answer is, are the MK2 and the MK1 the same brush? Almost everything in me says yes, they are the same brush, but without very precise measurement tools, I can't tell for sure. I will say, however, they're pretty much interchangeable for me, so that makes them the same brush for me. I won't say one brush is better than the other. I just prefer one design on the handle more than the other. And that's all. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this helpful. Bye.